Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
No, it's not like that. Seeing that Snow wanted to step forward to touch him, Harvey took a step back and causing her to miss. Everyone was shocked. Did Harvey just distance himself from Snow before everyone? What's going on? Harvey, however, straight up ignored the crowd as he stared at Snow and said, "Snow, your recent foolishness is beyond my ability to tolerate. Stop using my name to do anything from now on. There's nothing between us any longer." What? Snow was shocked. She did not at all expect that Harvey would say something like that just because she was teaching that girl, Nora, a lesson. Nothing between us any longer. That is to say, I can't even stay beside him as a female companion? No. Harvey. Please don't. Whatever weakness I have, I can change. Snow pleaded to him. Yet, Harvey's expression was icy cold. You can't change foolishness. For the usually affable Harvey to say something like this, everyone was stunned. Harvey had never been so indifferent to someone before. As he said that, Harvey did not wait for Snow to react and led his classmates into the rehearsal hall. Snow was just left there in a daze, and she almost fell. It was only with the support of her classmates behind her that she could barely regain her footing. When Stanley saw the scene, he could only sigh. Everything was Snow's own doing, and it was outside his control. Soon, everyone returned to the rehearsal hall and used the hall for rehearsal based on the timetable arranged by Stanley. On the way back, Lulu could not help but say to Nicole, "I never thought that we'd get such dramas to watch just by coming to the rehearsal." Yeah, and I guess that Snow and Rain were just boasting, and both Gary and Harvey had nothing to do with them. Nicole looked at Gary and the other two guys following behind her and reminded them in a whisper, "Don't gossip until when we get back. Don't let them hear it." Yeah, Nicole is right. Lulu immediately covered her mouth. San Joto, film site. As Chloe was unable to finalize her role in Lukewarm, so she could only take on some small drama roles in the country as she asked her manager to help her secure the ambassadorship for the Johnston Group. If she could get the ambassadorship for Johnston Group, then she would have a chance to approach Jared. As she thought of that, she spaced out again. Upon hearing the director calling for a cut, a look of impatience and irritation appeared in her eyes. This was already the 11th time, and the reason was that the feeling was not right. She was already doing her best in the shooting, yet somehow the feeling was not right, and she felt that the director was deliberating trying to embarrass her. The director gave Chloe a resigned look. The dissatisfaction in his eyes was almost palpable. "Chloe, what's the matter with you? Why are you spacing out like a log?" Together on the set today with Chloe was Lloyd, and he had seen Chloe's acting skills when he was overseas. Looking at the director's dissatisfied look and the aggrieved look in Chloe's eyes, a glint appeared in his eyes. "How about we stop here for today and allow Ms. Riddle to find her feel back?" Chloe looked at Lloyd when she heard that and felt glum. "When I was overseas, Lloyd Holder played a cameo role on the set, yet he did not give me any face at all. Now that I'm back in the country, he's the male lead, and I'm just a supporting character. With that, he is even more arrogant." Chloe had shot that scene 11 times this morning, yet she was completely overwhelmed by Lloyd Holder's acting skill and could do nothing at all. It was because of that did the director think that she was stiff as a log today. Yet, Lloyd did not think that it was his problem and instead asked her to take a break. The director could see the bitterness in Chloe's eyes, but he also knew very well that Chloe was being outperformed by Lloyd. If there was just too much difference in the performance between the two actors, then the scene looking stilted was inevitable. The weaker party would be carried along and lose their rhythm and ability to perform, not unlike a string puppet, as they fall under their opposing party's control. This was also why so many were trapped in their role after acting with Lloyd, with no way to further advance their career. They could not walk out of that trance they had been led into, as their performance was hinged upon the details Lloyd had set for the scene. Even if they were to act in another show, their movements and thoughts were forever locked onto that character they had played against Lloyd. That was why Lloyd Holder was called the showbiz assassin. He would silently murder those actors' performance levels and acting talents, leaving the actors at a loss when they moved out of his play. Thinking of this, the director sighed deeply. There were really very few people that were unaffected after performing with Lloyd. When he starred in Breaking Blue at 16, the star actress Miley Rogers, who performed opposite him, had said that the boy's ability was terrifying, and even she found it difficult to move out of the spot he had created for her. Sure enough, Miley no longer performed well in any other role in the past 6 years, even when she got a blockbuster script. Gradually, she too disappeared and no longer appeared in showbiz. And Chloe here was Miley's daughter. What a cycle. Is this mother-daughter pair going to have their careers ruined by Lloyd? After pondering for a bit, no matter how dissatisfied he was, the director could only say, "We'll call it a day today. Chloe, go and study the script." Chloe's appearance in this show was arranged by Miley, and if he allowed her to perish in Lloyd's hands, Miley would not let him off easy. After getting Nichelle's approval, he nodded respectfully at Chloe. "You can go and rest. I'll need to go get ready for the next scene." He did not wait for Chloe to react before smiling at the set crew and thanking them as he left. Chloe was stunned for a good while before complaining to her manager, "Damn that guy. He keeps wanting to find trouble every time he sees me. He's just a pretty face, so what is he showing off for?" As she said that, she irritably walked out of the set, got in the car, and left. Without anyone realizing, inside a low-key Cayenne on the opposite side of the road, Lloyd was staring at the photo in his hand in a daze. Seated opposite facing him, a woman looked at him with interest. She had a cigarette in her mouth, the puffs of smoke from it covering her face. After letting out a dramatic sigh, she said, "Lloyd, you've pissed off an actress again? You're not in form lately. Who can make you so out of sorts?" The person speaking was his manager, Anna. Lloyd's hands that were rubbing the photo paused. "She's a very important person to me." As she had a cigarette in her mouth, Anna's words were a bit mumbled. "Who's that person? Is she the young lady you met at the banquet the other day?" She had gone to the banquet that day, but she only saw the side of Nicole's face. Lloyd's hand paused suddenly as his brilliant eyes gradually trembled. The light in his eyes was beamed straight onto the photo before him. "Who is she to you?" Anna keenly perceived something was not right with his emotions. Lloyd had always been calm and collected, and he would not be trembling a little like this. A doubtful look soon appeared in her eyes. "Could she be the person you've been looking for all this while?" Anna had only briefly heard of her and knew that Lloyd had been looking for her, but she had no idea who she was. Lloyd did not speak at first, and after a long while he finally said, "Whether she is or not is no longer important." Anna closed in to have a look and could not help to quip, "She's really pretty, like an elf out from an ice cavern. Her looks are also top-notch in showbiz. Where did you find her?" There was no shortage of beautiful women in showbiz who were materialist and ambitious like Chloe, but what they lacked was beauty that was immaculate, sharp, and dynamic, so she rated Nicole very highly. Lloyd's hands suddenly clenched as he quickly put the photo away. He closed his eyes, and his voice no longer had the gaff tone from earlier. "Help me go through the script." Seeing so, Anna did not say much. "Oh, all right." She was still, however, curious. "If I run into Nicole again in the future, I need to take a closer look at her. Who knows if I can even scout her over." Chloe went back home sullenly and immediately realized that something was off with the atmosphere at home. She heard the sound of her mother crying in her room upstairs. Chloe's mood was foul, but when she heard her mother crying, she felt something was weird, so she went into the room. "Mom, what's wrong?" Miley had not left her room for 2 days now. When she recalled how she was slapped the other day, she would burst into tears from time to time. She originally thought that Damien would have mellowed down to look at her. However, it was her baby daughter who came looking for her instead. Seeing Chloe return home, Miley was even more riled. "My baby daughter, why are you back today? I've nothing to do at the set today, so I came back to have a look." "What's the matter, Mom? Who made you so sad?" Sensing something was not right, Chloe immediately asked. Having someone concerned about her, Miley's eyes reddened. "It was your father. Dad? Why?" Due to Miley's relationship with the Rogers family, Damien had always treated her well. So why did he make her feel so aggrieved? "It's all because of Daniel's family. Nicole has managed to hog all of the limelight before your grandpa, so your dad is like a different person now. Plus, the Rogers family now, Before she could finish, Miley started crying again. However, now Chloe understood what was going on as she hissed, "Mom, don't you worry. I won't just leave you and Dad like that." Chloe thought, the whole reason Nicole is hogging the limelight now is that Jared is the one behind supporting her. If I can snatch Jared for myself, who will dare to look down on me then? "You have a way." Miley looked up with anticipation. Chloe said with certainty, "Of course, isn't Grandpa favoring Nicole because she has Jared Johnston behind her? I'll be going over to the Johnston group to film the ambassadorship stuff in a few days' time. And once I get my hands on Jared, there'll be nothing left for Nicole." She was one of the 4 beauties of showbiz and was one of the hottest female stars this year. She refused to believe she was any lesser than Nicole. "When Jared learns of my charms, he will definitely toss Nicole aside." "You're right. If you are the in-law of the Johnston family, no one will dare to look down on your dad and me any longer." As Miley thought about it, her eyes lit up. "My girl, Mom can only depend on you now." Chloe let out a gleeful smile. "Don't worry, Mom, I won't disappoint you." As she thought of it, the sound of the door opening suddenly rang out. Miley frowned and wanted to admonish the person for being so rude to interrupt her conversation with her daughter. However, when she saw the person, the flames of anger in her eyes disappeared, leaving only an aggrieved look in them. Damien did not even look at Miley but instead turned to Chloe and said, "Chloe, has work been tiring? Why do you suddenly have time to return home?" Chloe looked at Damien. A faint sullen look flashed across her eyes as she complained to Damien, "Dad, how could you hit Mom?" As she said that, she glanced at Miley. After hearing that, Damien's expression changed. He did not expect Miley to tell his baby daughter about their troubles. When Chloe saw his expression, she knew he was in a bad mood. Knowing that she could not speak against him anymore, she instead acted spoiled at him. "Dad, even if you are in a bad mood, you cannot be taking it out on Mom, right? Also, that Nicole is really too much, and we cannot just take it lying down. We should be doing something about it." She was confident that her father would believe her, yet the moment she mentioned Nicole, Damien's expression turned into hesitation. He turned to look at his daughter and said softly, "I know what you are thinking, but now is not the time. Wait until we get another good business contract, then we don't have to be gauging other people's mood before your grandpa any longer." How could Chloe not tell that Damien was just trying to blow smoke before her eyes? This was the umpteenth time already. Chloe looked angrily at Damien. "Bear with it. What's wrong with you, Dad? This is not how you usually act. Why are you so fearful of Uncle Daniel and his family?" She doubted, "Is this man still my previously decisive and ruthless father?" Heavens know how much Damien wanted to give up enduring it. Yet, at this moment, the old man was favoring Daniel's family, and Nicole could very well be the next pillar of the family. So how can he go after her and look for trouble for himself? Although her daughter had that bit of relationship with the Johnston group, it was just a project, and no one could guarantee how long she could be on it. He knew his daughter very well, but Nicole was a true proven talent with a positive disposition, but his daughter? No matter how much he doted on his daughter, he could not just listen to her and ruin that last bit of love his own father had for him. Rationality and clarity of mind aside, as he looked at his daughter's angry face, Damien felt distressed. He pondered a little before saying, "One more time. I'll try one more time again. I won't just sit here and wait for my doom." Damien thought, "The old man trusts Daniel too much now, and I cannot do anything." As Chloe heard Damien's words, even though she felt a little dissatisfied, she knew that this was the limit of Damien's compromise. So she did not push him any further and just sat there sullenly. As he looked at his daughter's expression, Damien felt distressed. He had just this one daughter and had been doting on her every day, and she had never had to suffer such a massive grievance before. Damien then persuaded Chloe for a bit more before the latter's mood improved somewhat. For the next few days, Nicole went through a much more peaceful period of time. Aside from the daily rehearsals, she had nothing else to do. After the rehearsal, Nicole and June went to the teacher's office together to report the progress of the rehearsal in the past few days. They did not expect that Mr. Kennedy was seated before the desk of Mr. Lewis as if he was a criminal awaiting interrogation. Mr. Lewis glanced at Mr. Kennedy and asked, "Mr. Kennedy, are you sure about resigning?" Nicole and June heard that sentence as they stood outside the office and looked at each other. At this moment, Mr. Kennedy no longer had the usual gleeful smile on his face as he looked at Mr. Lewis, his tone sounding rather helpless. "I made up my mind. Please sign it off, Mr. Lewis." He had a pained look on his face, but he also knew that he had humiliated himself so much that he could no longer stay in this school. Yet Mr. Lewis could not help but curl his lips. "Mr. Kennedy, you're resigning right after your leave." "Why? What if you regret it later?" Mr. Kennedy had a relative on the school board of directors, and Mr. Lewis could be said to be trying to save his face. Yet, Mr. Kennedy said sullenly, "Don't you worry, I will not regret it." With him humiliating himself like that, no relative would even talk to him any longer, no matter how close they previously were. He knew very well that he could still do decently being a teacher in the Royal Creek Institute with his ability, but he had just humiliated himself beyond redemption. Moreover, Mr. Lewis and Mississippi Emerson, who he had deliberately bullied all this while, were now flourishing. Since he thought his days there would be insufferable, he could only leave. Seeing that he had made up his mind, Mr. Lewis got up and smiled. "Then I'll approve it." As he said that, he stamped the document without giving Mr. Kennedy any time to react. Mr. Kennedy was taken aback. He did not know that Mr. Lewis would stamp the document so quickly. He actually regretted it a little in his heart, but it was too late now. Mr. Kennedy sighed as he took the approved resignation letter and left. However, the moment he turned around, he saw Nicole and June by the door. Upon seeing Nicole, Mr. Kennedy's pupils contracted as if he was afraid to see her. Nicole glanced at him and smiled. "Mr. Kennedy, leaving again after you've just come back?" Mr. Kennedy looked awkwardly at Nicole. "I'm here to resign." "Why? Do you have an opinion about that?" Nicole looked at him with an icy gaze. "I have no opinions, but it seems like you've not yet settled the bet we made." Speaking of the bet, Mr. Kennedy's expression changed. Inside the office, the other teachers looked at one another. Mississippi Emerson looked a little unsettled as she sat on her seat. In fact, she had forgotten about the bet after she got the Excellent Teacher Award and did not expect Nicole to still remember it. Sensing the depressing atmosphere, Mississippi Emerson got up and came to Nicole's side. "Nicole, let's forget about it." Nicole, however, shook her head. "The bet back then was brought up by him, and I did not force him to make that bet. Mr. Kennedy, I'm sure you don't want to be known as a person who isn't a man of his words, right?" "You." Mr. Kennedy did not expect Nicole to corner him even at this stage. I'm not a teacher at this school already. You have no right to demand that I apologize publicly." "Is that so?" Nicole's eyes turned icy. "Since you're no longer a teacher of this school, then I've no need to hold back against you any longer." As she said that, Nicole's hand stretched out and grabbed Mr. Kennedy by the collar. Mr. Kennedy sweated profusely. As he struggled, he asked, What are you trying to do?" Nicole looked at him and sneered, "Help you make good of your word." As she said that, Nicole actually dragged Mr. Kennedy out of the office. Her strength was so great that Mr. Kennedy found it useless as he tried to grab onto the doorframe but was yet still dragged away by Nicole. Nicole. Sensing that things were bad, Ms. Emerson and June immediately chased after her. Mr. Lewis and the other teachers too followed behind. When Mr. Kennedy was grabbed by Nicole, he was sweating profusely from his forehead and was totally terrified. "Nicole, what are you doing? Let go of me. If you don't, I'll..." He tried to grab Nicole's hand, but with just one hand, she twisted his arm, causing him to scream in pain. "Error. You better not piss me off." Nicole's gaze was as if she was about to murder him, and that made Mr. Kennedy stiffen up. Just who is this girl? How is she so strong? Even as an adult, I'm no match for her. Very soon, Nicole dragged Mr. Kennedy to the broadcasting room and tossed him inside as she said, "You don't have to apologize in public, but you definitely need to broadcast the apology." If Mr. Kennedy wanted to resign, she would not stop him, but he needed to apologize for all of the abusive things he had done to Ms. Emerson. Mr. Kennedy still wanted to run away. However, the moment Nicole cast a glance over, Mr. Kennedy was so terrified he was unable to move and could only nod. I'll apologize. Nicole nodded and sneered. Go on then. Mr. Kennedy did not have much time to think about it as he immediately grabbed the microphone and adjusted the volume. All of the other teachers gathered outside the broadcasting room to see what Mr. Kennedy was up to. At this moment, Mr. Kennedy no longer cared to save face as he turned on the microphone and said tremblingly, I was discourteous to Ms. Emerson back then, and I apologized to her. It was I who had been mean and despicable. Ms. Emerson, she is the true model teacher. Mr. Kennedy looked at Nicole and was already so scared that he was a little incoherent. Seeing how Nicole had scared Mr. Kennedy until this stage, Ms. Emerson was both glad and a little moved by what Nicole did. Now, all of her resentment had been calmed and sated. Only after Mr. Kennedy blabbered a whole bunch of apologies did Nicole let him go as she said, "Get lost." She had no time to waste words with Mr. Kennedy here. Her time was very precious, after all. Yes. Mr. Kennedy immediately got up and scampered away. When everyone saw him run away, they could not help but cheer as a scourge was finally cast out. June walked out and looked at Nicole. Wow, Nicole, that was awesome. Nicole is definitely the first person who does what she says. Nicole, however, had a nonchalant look on her face. Since he's no longer a teacher of the school anyway, he's no different than any person in the society. I will teach whoever she wants a lesson any way I see fit. At this moment, Ms. Emerson walked out of the crowd and whispered to Nicole, "Thank you, Nicole." After today, no one would dare to trouble her, and this was Nicole making an example to everyone. Nicole looked at Ms. Emerson and smiled. "It's nothing. Consider it a repayment of gratitude for all those exercises you've given me." Ms. Emerson was slightly taken aback before failing to stifle her laughter. "It is really a blessing for me to have a student like Nicole." Another person who thought the same was Martin. After seeing Nicole at the Riddle family manor back then, he would inexplicably think about her. So much so that he was a little absent-minded for the past few days. At this moment, the experiment failed again, and Martin Wyance let out an irritable TSK as the experiment report in his hand was printed out. In fact, his experiment was almost about to fully take shape. If he was successful with it, he would definitely have the opportunity to join the most advanced medical laboratory in Yemenia and become one of the top medical talents in the lab. Perhaps he could even meet that miraculous physician the Rogers family had talked about, as that was the level he dreamed of reaching. It was said that the physician was someone a talent who returned from overseas, and her medical skills were the pinnacle of the medical profession. At just 21 years old, she had reached the apex of San Joto's medical profession. In San Joto, except for Joyce, who was his equal, Martin had never met a person like that before. This time, he was originally in a team with Joyce, and the experiment had reached the most critical phase. If they managed a breakthrough, that meant that they could take things to the next level and make a very meaningful contribution to the advancement and direction of cell regeneration and recombination. Yet, who knew he would suddenly become so lost and keep making mistakes? The lab room door suddenly opened as Joyce sullenly walked in. "Martin, what's the matter with you? This is the 7th failure already. Do you know how expensive our experiment materials are?" "I'm sorry." Martin was indeed the core command of the experiment, and he could not escape his responsibility, so he could only accept the mistake. Joyce's tone was pissed. Her large framed glasses covered half of her face, looking totally like a researcher, yet deep inside, there was a fount of complaints that was about to burst out like a geyser. She dared not hold a grudge against Martin, but at the same time, she hated the person that caused Martin to be so out of sorts. It was very likely for this reason, she might not be able to witness the most important stage of the experiment. Joyce was sullen. This was probably something caused by both Martin and I being too excellent, and he might have been seduced by some vixen. However, both of them were now the top pillars of the hospital, and their experiment's progress must not go wrong. Seeing that Martin was about to restart the experiment again, Joyce sighed as she took the experiment materials and said to Martin, "Let's go. We'll call it a day here today." As she cleaned up the lab table, Joyce could not help but look at Martin. She glared at him, her voice a little irritable. You don't seem to be yourself lately? Martin had rarely failed so many times in his experiments before, and this time was just abnormal. Martin could not help but ask, "What do I look like then?" Upon hearing this, Joyce was even more sullen as she felt that Martin was mocking her question. She tossed the materials in her hand aside as she said to him, "Your experiments had always succeeded after a few tries. Are you that bitter about doing the experiment with me?" They could be regarded as childhood friends, and they were classmates and colleagues as well. She had feelings for Martin, but he was as dumb as a log, and that caused her no end of heartaches. When Martin heard that, a curious look appeared in his eyes as he looked at Joyce and put down the test tube in his hand. "Why would you think that? What do I failing my experiments have anything to do with you?" His words made Joyce even more pissed off. She rolled her eyes as she hissed, "What do you mean? What nothing to do with me?" She thought that Martin would explain to her why he was so reluctant to be with her. Yet, after hearing Martin's words, he not only did not play along, he even said that it had nothing to do with her, and that made her even more peeved. Yes. Martin was resolute with his answer, and as he thought about Nicole, he went into a daze again. Seeing that he was out of sorts again, Joyce got even angrier. "He's not thinking about me, but someone else?" The more she thought of it, the angrier she got. She grabbed the test tube in Martin's hand and flung it to the ground as she roared, "Martin, why are you so annoying? Why doesn't he get my feelings?" Unable to bear the pain, nor could she verbalize it, Joyce could only leave the lab angrily. Martin looked at the test tube on the ground and frowned. The only reason he agreed to do this experiment together with Joyce was not because of how excellent she was. It was just that she was good enough that she would not hold him back. But now, by the looks of things, her temper is really unstable. Martin rubbed his nose as he squatted down to clean up the mess. A look of irritability appeared in his eyes. "Women, what a bother. Still, Nicole's the best." The Riddle family manor. Mr. Riddle Sr. was almost fully recovered. So, everyone returned to the manor to prepare a meal in celebration of his recovery. When Nicole, Samuel, and Spencer arrived, everyone else was basically there. Even Chloe was back home. Both Snow and Rain were out of sorts today. Both of them had not recovered from the shock Gary and Harvey had inflicted on them. Yet, when she saw Nicole coming in, a resentful look appeared in Rain's eyes. However, with Nicole standing in the family now, she no longer dared to run her mouth willy-nilly. Preston, meanwhile, looked at Nicole excitedly as he gave Nicole a rather silly smile. "Hey, Nicole." Seeing Nicole looking up at him, Preston pointed cryptically at her phone. "What's your number? I'll add you." They had already met each other a few times, yet he did not add her contact to his messenger. When something happened, he did not know how to reach her. Nicole raised her eyebrow and did not expect him to ask her for this before everyone. Is he not afraid that Karen and Dylan will get angry? Yet, she did not refuse him and told him the number she had registered for a newly created messenger account. Preston added her and paused for a moment. Her profile picture is just pitch black. This isn't all girly-like, no? However, he did not think too much about it as he quickly sent a friend request to her. Nicole saw a friend request pop up on her phone. Preston had used an extremely flashy emote to add her, and she felt regret adding him as a friend. She added him quick but was a little speechless as she looked at Preston. She totally did not expect Preston to be such a flashy person online. However, adding him as a friend was fine. She was, after all, still quite interested in that motorcycle he has. Seeing that she agreed, Preston let out a bright smile, and just as he was about to say something, he felt a chill behind him. He turned back with a strange look and saw Nicole's 5 elder brothers standing in a line behind him, looking at him not unlike a pig before a row of butchers sharpening their knives. Sean's gaze was icy cold, while Steve pushed his glasses a little. Stanley simply just smiled while Spencer crossed his arms with an impassive look as Samuel had an angry look on his face. Preston was a little confused as he did not understand where the hostility from these 5 games from. Steve, however, spoke first. His voice was gentle, yet his words were rather sharp. "Who allowed you to add our sister?" All of them had not seen Nicole in days. Now they had a chance to talk to her. Preston popped out of nowhere and even added her on the messenger app. Since when did this guy get so close to our baby sister? When Gloria heard them, she turned to Nicole and asked, Nicole, you've already met Preston in school? Nicole had a resigned look on her face. I've not only met him, I've even helped him resolve a problem. Yes, I've met him a few times. Preston is easy enough to get along with, she said. Stanley, however, thought that his little sister must have been deceived as Preston looked even more unreliable than Samuel. Preston, not realizing that he was being looked down upon, said innocently to Gloria, Aunt Gloria, Nicole's my cousin, so I'd of course take care of her in school. Gloria felt a little awkward. After all, they had never gotten along well with Dylan and his family. Yet somehow, Preston had a pretty good relationship with Nicole, and that was a surprise. Even Snow and Rain were surprised. They thought Preston had gone too far, ignoring his mother's threats and getting so close to Nicole. They saw Nicole as a shameless hussy who seduced their brothers. Cut it out, can't you all? Let's have our meal. Mr. Riddle Sr. interrupted at once, knowing that Karen was going to chasten Preston. Everyone bowed their heads and ate, and it was all quiet. During the meal, Mr. Riddle Sr. glanced at Nicole once. Nicole, since you and Jared are in love, it's time for marriage. The Johnston family took such good care of their family, so he thought of having them get married. Ha! Nicole did not expect Mr. Riddle Sr. to mention this. She was flustered, not knowing how to answer. Daniel saw his daughter's embarrassment and smiled. Dad, why don't we let Nicole think about it? After all, this is not just about her, and she should at least discuss it with Jared. Everyone was envious of Nicole upon hearing that. Chloe's eyes were full of jealousy, and she could not help but say, Grandpa, Nicole is just a student in the 11th grade. It doesn't sound right for her to get engaged at such a young age, and it will affect her studies. She would not let Nicole and Jared get engaged so early. She would not have a chance if they did. You have a point. Only did Mr. Riddle Sr. realize his suggestion was not well thought out. Nicole glanced at Chloe and thought for a moment. Grandpa, I'll discuss this with him. It appeared that it was just another thing to her, as if her relationship with Jared was close enough to discuss anything. Okay, you'd better hurry. The Johnstons are a prominent family. I wouldn't need to worry about you if you can get married early. Mr. Riddle Sr. smiled, sincerely hoping Nicole would get engaged as soon as possible. Chloe's face darkened, and she felt that Mr. Riddle Sr. was biased. Rain and Snow were extremely jealous. Why are we all dumped while Nicole is going to marry a man as outstanding as Jared? Snow tried hard to suppress her emotion, but Rain was completely out of control. She stood up abruptly and said, Grandpa, you are too biased. How long have Nicole and Jared been dating that you can't wait for them to get married? What about me? Karen did not expect her daughter to talk like this and quickly pulled her aside. Rain, what are you talking about? Do you have a boyfriend? Rain was a little depressed. Everyone in the family knew that her sister and Harvey were dating, and no one cared about her and Gary's progress. Gritting her teeth, Rain said, Yes. I've liked Gary for a long time, and I want to marry Gary too. Ridiculous. Mr. Riddle Sr.'s face changed. Why didn't I know about this? Does Gary like you? Rain's face sank upon hearing the question. She did not know how to tell them that Gary had completely distanced himself from her for the past few days. Mr. Riddle Sr. and everyone else understood what her silence meant. Nicole and Jared are in love. You have to first figure out your position in Gary's heart before telling me about this, Mr. Riddle Sr. hissed and ordered everyone to continue the meal. Rain shot a glare at Nicole with hatred. She always believed that if it were not for Nicole and Gary playing the male and female protagonists together, Gary would not have dumped her. She thought it was because of Nicole that everything changed. I will not let Nicole have everything she wants. Nicole could not care less about Snow and Rain. After the meal, she turned on the screen of her phone to send a text message. I'm going back to the campus. I'll pick you up. The other side replied at once. Nicole looked at the reply with a smile in her eyes, as if she felt his eagerness. Okay. Then, she tucked the phone back into her pocket before she got up and said goodbye to Mr. Riddle Sr. and others. Grandpa, Jared is picking me up. I'll go back to the campus. Okay, enjoy your time together. Mr. Riddle Sr. looked at Nicole with a smile. He would be happy to see Nicole spend her time with Jared, the longer the better. Nicole nodded and then turned and left. She saw a car pulled up in front of her with Jared inside as soon as she stepped out of the gate of the Riddle mansion. He looked at her and smiled with his eyes narrowed. "Have you missed me these past few days?" Nicole smiled. "Yes." Jared saw the bright smile on her lips, beautiful and enchanting. "It looks like you miss me a lot. But why didn't you text me?" He had only received one text message from her in the past few days. Nicole was startled for a second as if not expecting this question. "Didn't you say you'd be busy?" He did not know what to say upon hearing her answer. Jared felt his chest tight with a sense of disappointment. "I said I would be busy, but not to the point of not being able to answer calls or read messages. You've never sent me a single text message. How cruel." It was he who made the initiative to contact her all this while, but for the past few days, he had deliberately tried to see if she would contact him. Jared waited and was disappointed. She never made the first move. Claus looked at Nicole with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Jared cares so much for her, he even questions a girl why she hasn't texted him. Nicole sighed. "Okay, I'll text you next time." She was highly self-restrained and did not like to bother others. But she understood it when Jared told her. He felt much better upon hearing her reply. He brought her into the car and drew her into his arms while ignoring if Claus was looking. "I miss you." Jared cared so much about a woman for the first time. Claus told himself to concentrate on driving and kept his eyes looking dead ahead. Nicole smiled. "I miss you too." Then she reached to hug him. Jared's exhaustion over the past few days had finally eased. What he cared about most was Nicole. Nicole glanced at Jared and pondered for a moment. "Has the Johnston family given the pressure on my grandpa?" Jared frowned and looked at her. "What?" "My grandpa said today that he wished we would get engaged sooner." Jared was surprised, but then he thought of something and laughed. "Someone must be desperate." "Who?" Nicole frowned. "My second uncle." Jared's face darkened. "He doesn't know who you are, just thinking that you are just another girl from the Riddle family." His second uncle wished to have Jared and Nicole get married so that Jared would not have a marriage arrangement with other families, and they would not be afraid of him anymore. Not knowing Nicole's true identity and what she was capable of, they thought they had made the best bet. Little did they know Jared would get a treasure if he married Nicole. "Oh? So what do you think?" Nicole asked rhetorically. Jared could not help but smile. "Of course, I want to marry you as soon as possible, but it must be I who proposes."
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.